Hey y'all, happy Friday. It's Miss Rives here, and today I'm going to be going over the three Chinese philosophies with you. This will be on Schoology, so you can see the PowerPoint there. There are three Chinese philosophies that have impacted Chinese politics and culture in the classical era. The first one is Confucianism. That one arguably has the largest impact. The second one is Taoism. That one also has an impact on East Asia. You should be able to identify some ways that impacted East Asia. And the third one is legalism. Legalism is probably the least significant out of the three. It has the least long-term impacts on China. So just before I get into some of the Confucian notes, I just wanted to recap for a minute. We learned that after the early River Valley civilization, there was the Shang and the Zhou dynasty. When the Zhou dynasty falls, China enters a 600-year period called the period of the Warring States, where there are competing leaders, where there's no unified government. There's a lot of fighting over who controls China and in what region. So it's kind of like a chaotic, turbulent period. And during that period, Confucianism and Taoism emerge, kind of like as a way to address some of the turbulence, to give China some consistency, and to almost give them some direction for where to move, so that they can have a little more stability in society. Okay, so Confucianism is the biggest Chinese philosophy that has the largest impact on Chinese politics and culture. Confucianism is founded by Confucius. This is Confucius here. His name is Confuci, um, and he wrote a text called the Analects. And the Analects contains a lot of his sayings, these little nuggets of wisdom almost, about how society should function. Confucius was a political advisor, from an aristocratic family. He played a role in a government court, and visited various government courts in China. So he was able to see how governments function, see that they weren't doing so well because China was so chaotic at the time. And he ends up coming up with these ideas, about moral, political, and ethical issues. And he had some values. He valued the idea of Ren, or kindness, being courteous, respectful, diligent, loyal. He also valued this concept Li, or appropriateness. Individuals should behave in an appropriate way, for example, by showing respect to their superiors. He also believed in this concept of Zhao, filial piety, basically respect for, respect for family, respect for any superiors, respect for the emperor. So he believed that people that had these characteristics will have the self-control needed to be a good leader, and will restore order, to China, restore political and social order to China. So he thought that the government should be filled with workers that had these values. These type of people should work in the government bureaucracies. So his ideas, he came up with the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. That's an example of one of his nuggets of wisdom found in the Analects. He ends up, or his followers end up building schools where Confucian thought is taught. Schools where students had to memorize the Analects, and the students who went through those Confucian schools and end up passing a test, we're going to call it the civil service exam. Those people eventually worked in the government a few hundred years down the line. When the Han Dynasty is established, the Han leaders value Confucianism. They like the Analects. They like the idea that the government workers should be educated according to Confucian ideas. They should be conscientious and ethical. So Emperor Han Wudi of the Han Dynasty will create an educational system based on Confucianism. It'll train future bureaucrats so that government workers have the correct education needed to work in the government. I should also say that Confucianism is promoted by the Han Dynasty. Confucianism will continue to be promoted by future dynasties in China. Oh, one other thing. Confucius thought that leaders, government leaders, should take care of the people. They should be kind, benevolent. Again, they should have these values: kindness, appropriateness, filial piety. Um, he thinks good leaders need to take care of their people. Okay, the second Chinese philosophy is Taoism. Taoism is founded by Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching. That would be the text that contains Taoist ideas, and there's a picture of Lao Tzu here. Um, the Taoism was also kind of established during the period of the Warring States, during a time where China was kind of politically chaotic. Um, the um, Taoism is all about focusing on nature. In fact, the word Tao translates to the way, like the way of nature. There's this idea that there's a passive force that acts in harmony with the principles of nature. It's kind of hard to understand this concept because it's so abstract, but it's just this idea that there's some type of force that works with nature and everything should be in harmony. We should be in touch with nature. People should reflect and become introspective, like look inward to understand the natural principles that govern them. Um, Taoism does not work well with the government because under Taoism, there's this principle of wu wei, which pretty much means disengagement. The idea that people should not pursue education and they should not actively get involved with any government affairs. People should like disengage themselves from the government. Instead, people need to live in small communities without conquering, without trading, kind of like subsistence, taking care of yourself, not really having a government. So Taoism doesn't fit well with any active government because the whole idea of Wu Wei means we disengage from the government. So Taoist philosophers are focused a lot on nature. They're focused on one person living in harmony, living sort of in a small community. Again, like looking at nature, looking at water, growing different plants, maybe taking plants and experimenting with different medications. I get like what I mean by that is um, growing different plants and seeing like, does this plant help me with my headache? Could I consume this herb and it makes me feel better when I'm sick. So a lot of Taoists um, end up like creating different herbal remedies for illnesses or ailments. And a lot of Taoist alchemists end up experimenting with like plants, metals, things that come out of the ground to like create things like fireworks. It's Taoist alchemists that discover how gunpowder works, and gunpowder was first used for fireworks. So a lot of like experimenting with things that come out of the earth. Okay, the last philosophy is legalism. I'm going to move my face for a little bit. Legalism is founded by Shang Yang. Han Feizi is another like follower of legalism. Legalism does not end up impacting one major government. I'm sorry, legalism does end up impacting one major government, but it does not end up impacting China like on a large scale the way that Confucianism does. Legalism is focused on the state and the government. Legalists don't care about ethics, morality, or nature. So they don't care about being an ethical, moral leader like Confucius thought. They also don't care about nature like Taoists think. They care about having strong leaders with harsh punishments. So if you follow legalism, you want to have one strong leader who's going to dole out harsh punishments to people who don't follow the rules. Legalists do want people actively engaged in agriculture or in the armed forces because they want to have enough food for Chinese society. They also want to have a strong armed forces to protect China from outsiders. They do not really encourage education. That's different from Confucius. And there is one legalist dynasty. It is the Qin dynasty. Qin Shi Huangdi did promote legalism. He was a harsh leader. He had strict punishments. He did encourage people to farm. Actually force people to farm, force people to build some of his infrastructure. But because the Qin dynasty is so short, it's only like a 20-year dynasty, it doesn't last. Legalism doesn't end up impacting China in the long term the way that Confucianism does, because Confucian thought, Confucian school, Confucian bureaucracy, that will continue to impact China for several dynasties, whereas legalism is just one, it's just the Qin dynasty. Okay, so that is kind of it for the notes. For the rest of class today, y'all are going to be looking at quotes in a worksheet. I have one of the quotes here. You're going to read the quote and try to determine what philosophy is being described. This quote here says, in inflicting penalties, light offenses should be punished severely. Oh, punishment. Punishment's an indicator of legalism. If light offenses do not appear, heavy offenses will come. This is said to abolish penalties by means of penalties. And the state will certainly become strong. Oh, a strong state, a strong government, that's also kind of a trigger for legalism. If crimes are serious but penalties are light, light penalties will breed further problems. So if people are, I don't know, committing murder and just getting a little fine, having a light penalty, then they're not going to be dissuaded from continuing to commit murder. So it's good to have harsh punishments according to legalism. Excuse me. The wise in governing the people considers the springs of their actions, never tolerates their wicked desires, but seeks only for the people's benefits. Therefore, the penalty he inflicts is not due to hatred of the people, but his motive of loving the people. So this says that punishing people isn't, I'm not punishing someone because I hate them or because I want to be mean. I'm doing it because I love them. If penalty triumphs, the people are quiet, so people stay in line if there's harsh penalties. If rewards overflow, culprits appear. Therefore, the triumph of penalty is the beginning of order. So we can't have an ordered society without harsh punishments, without penalties. So this is legalism here. Okay, next quote. Refrain from exalting the worthy. Don't honor the worthy, so that the people will not scheme and contend. Refrain from prizing rare possessions, so that people will not steal. Refrain from displaying objects of desire, so that the people's hearts will not be disturbed. Therefore, the wise ruler rules his people thusly. He empties their minds, he fills their bellies, he weakens their ambitions, strengthens their bones. He strives to keep the people innocent of knowledge and desires, and to keep the knowing ones from meddling. By doing nothing that interferes with everything, nothing is left unregulated. I know this one's kind of confusing, but this is actually Taoism. Doing nothing, disengaging. Oops. Okay, and this one ends up being clearly Confucianism. So a country of 1,000 war chariots can't be administered unless the ruler attends strictly to business, punctually observes his promises, is economical in his spending, shows affection towards subjects, only uses the peasant's labor at the right times of the year. If you govern people by regulations and keep order among them by punishing them, they will flee from you and lose all self-respect. But if you govern them by moral forces, keep order among them, they will keep their self-respect and come to you of their own accord. So this passage is indicating what a good ruler should do. They should take care of the people, take care of their promises, not spend too much, not abuse the labor. This fits more with Confucianism. Okay, so again, for the rest of class, you're going to do this worksheet. I believe you're matching up the philosophies to different quotes and explaining your reasoning why. You're going to turn this in at the end of class. So you've got about 30 or 35 minutes to work on this assignment. There's no homework over the weekend, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.